On Friday, Palantir's CTO was interviewed by CNBC. During this interview, he shared many great insights into Palantir's commercial and government sector, AIP, and the growth that they're seeing in the AIP bootcamps, and much, much more. And he definitely wasn't shy about dropping some very juicy and bullish numbers during this interview. So in this video, we're going to watch that interview, and then after each section, I'm going to share my thoughts. Let's get into it.
Joining me here exclusively at the Reagan National Defense Forum, Shyam Sankar, CTO of Palantir Technologies, which is up more than 215% since the start of the year. Shyam, it's really good to have you here with me. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Morgan.
You do have technology deployed in Ukraine. You also work very closely with Department of Defense here in the U.S. and other government agencies. Is your software being deployed to Israel too?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have come to Reagan from Tel Aviv. So we are proud, we've been unequivocal in our support for Israel and their right to defend themselves against these barbaric attacks. And we've worked in Israel since at least 2014.
Okay. I mean, we talk a lot about demand for hardware and weapons and munition stockpiling, et cetera. Are we seeing the same sort of demand for software and technologies?
Yeah, the need to make better decisions quicker, that are more precise, more protective of civilians, that enable you to take the advantage over the adversary has never been more clear. We've seen that play out on the battlefield of Ukraine and how asymmetric that capability can be. We're seeing it play out in totally different domains like Israel now, and there are a lot of lessons here that I think are going to apply as we think about the Pacific theater.
Okay, lessons like some examples?
How are you going to fight in a coalition environment? You think about, of course, Israel has to do so much, but we're supporting not only Israel, but also her allies. How are allies involved? There's the logistics and supply chain element of this, but there's also the broader collaboration, situational awareness, the evacuation of non-combatants. We have to bring all of those things that we really started learning since Afghanistan to bear in the next theaters that provide geopolitical challenge for us.
So in that section, he confirmed Palantir's support towards different countries in times of conflict. Now, this is not new information. If you follow Palantir, you will know that they've been very bold and very out there with who they're going to support and who they're actually going to supply their technology to. He spoke about how Palantir's technology is being utilized and deployed, but interestingly, he pointed out how there is now this shift. Up until recently, the demand in terms of conflict and the defense sector has very much been on hardware, but that seems to now be shifting. So although there is still a demand for hardware, there is also now this increase in demand for software. And when we're thinking about Palantir, like he was saying, this is technology that can give certain people on the battlefield the advantage. So we're talking about software that can enable decisions to be made better and quicker. Software that can increase the situational awareness. But like he said, it extends past that and actually goes into logistics and supply chain. All of this to give a competitive edge. Now, of course, this is what Palantir's software does in general, not just on the battlefield, not just in the government sector, but also in the commercial sector. Of course, the competitive edge looks very different depending on which business area you're looking at. Commercial sector may mean, better revenues, better productivity. The defense sector, very, very different. But ultimately, it all comes down to software that can give the competitive edge. They also mentioned at the start there that he has flown from Israel to the Reagan National Defense Forum. If you're not familiar what this is an annual event that himself and Alex Karp have recently just attended over Friday and Saturday just gone. Palantir were actually named a diamond partner during this event, and Alex Karp spoke on a panel about an array of different topics that included the responsibility that the US tech companies like Palantir actually have, and how Alex Karp sees the United States as having an advantage in terms of software, technology, and AI advancements. So let's continue.
And of course, Palantir is a dual-use technology company, really one of the first ones to the public market. So you work with government, you also work with commercial and private sector as well. And you're also one of those companies that has been working on developing and deploying AI for quite a number of years now. So as other companies are thinking about investments, you're already monetizing your investments. These AIP...
Just quickly on that bit, that highlights one of the main reasons that I'm particularly convicted and bullish on Palantir as a company. This whole idea that they are a dual-use technology company, they are not just reliant on one particular area. They have both their commercial and enterprise side of the business, but also their government and defense side of the business. And this means that they're diversified in terms of revenue, which of course then means that if the macroeconomic situation is very poor and actually commercially businesses aren't using a lot of their money to invest into AI and invest into companies like Palantir, then Palantir still have the chance to actually do quite well in those tough times because they have this government side of their business whereby the contracts are a lot longer, they're a lot stickier, and I guess unfortunately as well, when times are tough in terms of conflicts going on around the world and that can make the macro poor, Palantir have their foot in that as well. And although Palantir are a pretty new company in terms of being a newly public company, they have been in the AI space for many, many years, a lot more years than most of the competitors. So they have now gotten to a point where they are offering real world applicable value AI solutions. They are not just offering AI solutions that are maybe fun, trendy, can write poetry, but those ones that can actually change a business, that can actually save lives in a hospital setting or on a battlefield. Anyway, let's continue because this next section is really, really good.
Bootcamps that were talked about in the third quarter earnings, these artificial intelligence platform bootcamps. I think there had been an expectation that maybe you would sign on 140 companies in the month of November to these bootcamps. I guess walk me through what they are and how many people, how many companies have shown interest.
Yeah, so these bootcamps, we've rebuilt our entire go-to-market around it because it's really this magical experience where you get your hands on the keyboard for 8 hours and you leave that experience with a production-ready use case. And with even more than that, a deep and intuitive understanding of how do you apply this technology to get real results. More than a proof of concept, actual proof that you can take to your enterprise and get results. And so this has been a profound change for us. And we ended November, we thought we'd do 140, we did it for 200 organizations. We're on track this year to serve 325 organizations with boot camps. And we really focused.
Did you just hear what he said there? He said that they anticipated to hold 140 AIP bootcamps in the month of November. That was already more bootcamps in just the month of November than they did pilots in the whole of 2022. But they actually managed to complete 200 in November. That is a big increase, and they are now on track to serve 325 organizations for the rest of the year. This is really great because for a lot of people, AIP is the one thing that Palantir offer that has the potential to grow Palantir the most, the thing that people are the most bullish on. And clearly the demand is there because they wouldn't hold 200 boot camps instead of 140 unless they had the people to attend those boot camps. Because at the end of the day, although it probably doesn't cost them a lot, it still costs them money and effort and resources to hold these boot camps. So I think this goes to show us that actually people do want to come to them. People are very, very interested in seeing how they can utilize AIP in their own businesses. And these AIP bootcamps, this go-to-market strategy, seems to be really, really working for them. For a long time, Palantir had valuable and great software, but they had a real issue in terms of scaling it and selling it. But now they have these AIP bootcamps that really does seem to be changing the way for them and helping them actually get their product into businesses. Now, of course, AIP is not yet monetized. It is kind of indirectly monetized, and I made a whole video about that I'll link up here if you're interested. But at some point, they will look to actually turn on the monetization, and that's when the numbers get very crazy. But these AIP bootcamps, they're working. They are a 0 to 5 day event. Often they're only lasting, 1 day, where different people from different businesses can attend. During this event, they work with the Palantir engineers and the Palantir resources to actually understand, hands on keyboard, how AIP can work in their business with their data. They then leave that event with a use case, with a production ready use case, like he was saying, for AIP. What they then do is they take that knowledge and they go and speak to the people in charge, and they tell those people in charge how much they need AIP in their company. And if they don't already have the right infrastructure to utilize AIP to its fullest, they might then be able to upsell Palantir's Foundry. That's just one thing to think about. I guess the whole point of these AIP bootcamps is to reduce that barrier to entry. A lot of people are looking to actually integrate AI into their businesses because it's this buzzword. It's getting a lot of attention. But quite often, they don't then take that next step because it's too difficult. People don't understand what large language models are, what ontologies are. And actually, by having these go-to-market strategies of these AIP bootcamps, it does reduce that barrier to entry and get more signups, which is, of course, what Palantir are seeing. On the screen now, you can see that there are already some massive, massive names using AIP. And I think we know that the growth is there. AIP is still in its infancy. It's still very early days. It didn't get released that long ago, but the growth is clearly happening. And I think that in a couple of months, maybe 6 months' time, we are going to see so many other big names on this board using AIP.
And we've really focused on commercial so far this year, particularly focused on U.S. commercial. Next year and into December here, we're really going to be bringing this to the U.S. government as well.
And we saw it in the third quarter re-accelerate growth on the commercial side. It also, I would imagine, lowers your marketing costs and creates a stickier environment in terms of more companies coming on board. Is that what you're continuing to see?
We're continuing to see that. I think one of the most profound effects of, let's call it 2023, the year of reinvention around ChatGPT, is the expectation that software is actually going to work and the accountability that's around that. So people want to leave with 8 hours of effort realizing they can put something in production.
So he just said that the focus this year so far has been more on that commercial side, but they're looking to actually expand into the US government in December and next year. Like they were kind of hinting at there, the thing about the government sector is that they are massive, massive contracts over a long time period. And it's very, very sticky. Palantir as a company is very sticky. Once they get integrated into a business, whether that's on the commercial side or the government side, it's very, very difficult for companies to then look elsewhere, to maybe move to a different competitor, because it integrates itself and they see the value as well. And you made a great point there about ChatGPT. We've actually just gone over the 1 year mark, the 1 year anniversary of ChatGPT being released. And ever since then, every single company has been trying to have an AI offering of some sort, even if it's not valuable. But he's very, very, right there in saying that people have this AI demand, but they don't just want something that isn't actually useful. They want to have something that can really help their business. So let's see what he has to say now.
I do want to talk to you about something else that is on your website, but I don't know that it has been discussed very much publicly yet, and that is Palantir Web Government Services. Is this a new business strategy for Palantir?
Yeah, the idea is, we were one of the first defense tech companies. We spent 20 years kind of building this wormhole between modern American software and the Defense Department. And there's not just your product, there's all of this software infrastructure you need just to get to the starting line when you're dealing with an institution like the DoD. How do you get on their networks? How do you deal with accreditation? How do you get to data? We now have $100 billion of capital deployed through VCs, hundreds of new entrants in this category, which is so exciting. I want to help them succeed. And uniquely, Palantir has spent the last 20 years banging our head against the wall, needing to develop technologies that I know they're going to need to get to the starting line. And so Palantir Government Web Services is really about bringing that to them, helping them succeed faster, bend the revenue curve, bend the cost curve, get to that next round and survive the valley of death.
I mentioned the fact that
Palantir's Government Web Services. This may not have been something that you've ever heard about before, but you probably have heard about FedStart, which I've spoken about on this channel many times, but it's a program that Palantir offer that actually solves a real problem that many, many startup companies and other businesses have. They have this program that helps companies get their solutions, their software solutions in front of the US government, which typically is very expensive, time consuming, and very, very difficult. FedStart is one of the 3 offerings that actually fall under, as far as I'm aware, that fall under Palantir's Government Web Services. Alongside FedStart is Apollo, which is a platform that Palantir have. If you don't know about that, go on their website, have a read. It's very interesting. And also Ontology SDKs, which stand for Software Development Kits. As he said there, Palantir have been in this business for a long time, and they have been through everything already, all of the challenges, and they have different solutions, individual solutions that they can now offer upcoming defense tech companies to actually help them out and help them get to where they need to be. If you want me to make a whole separate video on Palantir's web government services, do let me know in the comments below.
You're already realizing returns on all of your AI investments and software investments. You've had 4 quarters of profitability. You're now eligible for possible entry into the S&P 500. Are you expecting that? Are you gaming that out? What would that mean for the company?
I think it's one of the things that you can't really have expectations around. But what I think it would mean for the company, and actually more importantly, the broader defense tech ecosystem, it's been 45 years since an actual defense company, one not born out of mergers and spin-outs and other financial engineering, but a new venture formation has been added to the S&P 500. The primes, they were added on March 4th, 1957, which is the year that the indice was created. So that doesn't feel like American dynamism to me. I think it feels more like the sclerotic nature of European capital markets. And I think we should bring the best of America to this. And I hope we would be the first of many of these hundreds of defense companies that have an opportunity to participate.
It's quite interesting that he describes Palantir as a defense company there, but he also said it's been 45 years since a defense company was actually added to the S&P 500. Now, interestingly, this interview came out on Friday, I believe, and then shortly after that, we discovered that Palantir weren't actually being included in the S&P 500 this time around. That doesn't, however, mean that they won't be included. It's just not happening this time around. So the three companies that were chosen to join the S&P 500 were this quarter, this rebalancing, were Builders First Source, Uber and Jabil. So that leads us to the question of, okay, well, it's clearly important. He says it himself, and we know all of the benefits of an S&P 500 inclusion. So when will Palantir actually join? Well, the S&P 500 undergoes quarterly rebalancing. This happens after close on the third Friday in March, June, September, and December. So in order to get included into the S&P 500, companies have to meet strict eligibility criteria. Palantir have already met that, so they are eligible for inclusion. However, obviously, S&P 500 is made up of only a certain amount of companies. That means that unless companies are removed, which they are when they are no longer eligible, companies can't just be freely added. So companies are removed because they no longer meet the criteria, and then that leaves gaps for other companies to be added. There are sometimes many companies that have met the eligibility criteria, and we can't add all of them. So what then happens is it goes to a committee to decide which of those companies are added during this rebalancing season, I guess. And it just so happened that Palantir weren't chosen this time around. However, we're now looking at the first half of next year. So fingers crossed they'll be added then. But don't be too concerned by this. They are still eligible, and it's just a matter of when rather than if. Let me know in the comments below what your highlights were from that interview. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll be back shortly with another.